Today we're going to learn how to balance the half reactions that we wrote a few days ago. By balance, I mean that the total number of electrons that is lost in a reaction must equal the total number of electrons that is gained during the reaction. So let's take a look at the reaction of sulfur plus HNO3 forming SO2 plus NO plus H2O. Now here we have lots of different elements. Only two of them are going to be changing charges. So to balance half reactions, the first thing we have to do is write the half reaction. And in order to do that, we have to figure out what it is that's changing. So let's start assigning oxidation numbers. On the reactant side, I can see that S is by itself, which means sulfur is going to have a charge of 0. HNO3, they're part of a compound. I know that H is going to be a +1 charge. Oxygen is going to be a -2 charge because I have rules for those two and they're not exceptions. For nitrogen, I have 3 -2s, which is -6. The hydrogen gives me +1, so to add up to 0, the nitrogen has to be +5. On the product side, SO2, the sulfur has a charge, well, we need to figure out the charge of sulfur. Oxygen has a charge of -2. There are 2 of them, so that's a total of -4, so the sulfur has to be +4. For NO, I know the nitrogen is going to be -2, or the oxygen is going to be -2, so the nitrogen has to be +2. And then water, the hydrogen is +1, the oxygen is -2. Now that I have all of the oxidation numbers assigned, I need to identify the two things that are changing. Sulfur 0 is turning into sulfur +4. So that one is changing. I have S0 forming S +4. That's a difference of 4 electrons. And those 4 electrons are going to go on the product side because the sulfur atom is losing those electrons. Hydrogen, +1, +1 isn't changing. The nitrogen goes from +5 to +2. So I have N +5 forming N +2, and the 3 electrons are going to be on the reactant side. Now, here I have my 2 half reactions. Let me line them up so that the arrows are together. I have 4 electrons being lost by each sulfur atom, but only 3 electrons being gained by each nitrogen. So when I say that overall the electrons lost have to equal the electrons gained, I don't mean that the number on the product side of one has to equal the number on the reactant side of the other. What I mean is this reaction isn't balanced, so we're going to have different numbers of sulfurs and nitrogens. So what I want to do at this point is just get the number of electrons to be equal. So I have 3 electrons being gained, 4 being lost. The least common multiple of 3 and 4 is 12. So I'm going to multiply both of these reactions, or both of these half reactions, by a number that will give me a total of 12 electrons. So I need to multiply the top one, the sulfur, by 3. So I have 12 electrons being lost, and the bottom one by 4, so I have 12 electrons being gained. So to write a balanced half reaction, you need to assign the oxidation numbers so that you can determine what is actually being oxidized and reduced. Write the half reaction just like we did before, and then the only new step is to take each half reaction and multiply it by something so that you have the same number of electrons being lost as those being gained.